came in the sun.
And he said it's the first time in his life that he's had conversations with people, and they take him as just a person. No notices about different things from Connecticut. From Maine.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jim Smart, as most of you know, and I'm from the Middle East Study Group of the Unitarian Church, and also from the Palestine Education Network, a division of New Hampshire Peace Action. And I got in touch somehow with a Tree of Life organization in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and they are the ones who are really sponsoring this event. And so without further ado, I will introduce our person who is going to introduce the program. So thank you all for coming.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be with you all. It's wonderful to see you. My name is Gufran Al-Lababidi. I'm originally from Syria. I came to this country in year 2000. I came as an immigrant. And here I am after 19 years. I'm a mother of 5 young children. I learned about Tree of Life in year 2015 when a group of our mosque traveled with a group from the church to the Holy Land. And when they came back with a huge number of vibrant stories. In the year 2016, I became a board member of that organization. And I made sure at that year to be one of the first people to sign up for this trip, as I was fascinated about the stories they have brought back from the Holy Land. Also, I wanted to be part of the friendship and partnership between my mosque, the Islamic Association of Greater Hartford, and the Old Lyme Church, the first congregational church. In year 2017, as I mentioned, I became a board member of this organization, and now I'm happy and humbled to serve this cause as a president of the board. So about Tree of Life, for more than 17 years, this organization has been offering an annual journey to the Holy Land, land of Canaan. And we have been trying to educating kids, college students, and others about the occupation and about the struggle, and also about the role that we all play from a distance. Over those years, more than 500 people have participated in those journeys, and I have found it very enriching. Traveling with a broad diversity of people, and traveling with Muslims, traveling with Christian, Jews, Buddhists, and people who has no particular faith identity, that help us all to celebrate the rich diversity of our human family. Also, Tree of Life offers yearly conferences, programs, films, and music presentations. Thank you for being with us today. I'm not going to go through other programs that we have done. We have done many programs. All of them became wonderful programs, very successful. And tomorrow is going to be our last program in the Cape Cod area. In this series, we have invited a wonderful Palestinian young people. They are our ambassador here. They're going to talk to us about their daily life, and they're going to talk to us about their struggle, and also on the other hand, they're going to talk to us about the hope that always been alive and always been waiting for the promised morning. The title of our Tree of Life series for this year has been borrowed from a poem of Emily Dickinson entitled, Will There Really Be a Morning? Our young Palestinians are here with us because they are hopeful about the future. And I would love, as you too, that we all be hopeful of the future. we all together, we can be an answer for this for this question. Yes, there will be a morning. When we work all together, we can make this world a better place, and we can make it more of a just place. I have 5 of my own children, and I would love to see them growing up in a world where it's free of gun violence, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and any painful division in our human family. That's why I am here, and this is why I am volunteering with Tree of Life. Also, we are very honored to invite a guest, very special guest. This couple is from this country, from the United States, but they are sharing the struggle with the Holy Land in Palestine. I would like to thank Craig and Sandy. Thank you so much for being with us in this series. Sadly, their daughter, Rachel Corey, at only 23 years of age, died while trying to stop a demolition of a Palestinian home in Gaza. Rachel was raised in a family that believes in compassion and in a universal human right. And we are so very honored to have the parents with us. So through our journeys to the Holy Land, we learned about the high value that Palestinian families place on education. And also, Tree of Life has been offering a program. It's an educational program offering a scholarship for the student in college, in a university in Palestine, just like Bethlehem University, Al-Quds, or Birzeit University. We have been importing an authentic olive oil, so we sell it here, and the proceeds will been sending back to support the Palestinian scholarship. Please make sure to head back at the end of this program and get your bottle of olive oil, and I will assure you that you will bring a hope for one of the Palestinian students or one of the families over there. We appreciate it. So also, what we learned through those programs, through those journeys to the Holy Land, we learned something that nothing will be changing over there unless we change the mind and the heart of the people over here. And also, if we can change the policies of our government. We need to become more active in supporting the legislations, such as HR 2407. It's an important piece of legislation that's been sponsored by Representative Betty McCollum in Minnesota. There's 8 to 10 million has been given every day to Israel. Yes, it's every day. And those 8 to 10 million, it can be used as a leverage to ensure that Israel respects the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, championed by another voice of conscience, Eleanor Roosevelt. In closing, I would like to share with you that I was born and raised in a historic city, a beautiful city called Aleppo. And despite all the pain and all the tragedy has been taking place in Syria for more than 9 years, despite the failure of the world community to stop the war until now, but I would like to say that I am very proud of my country. And I would like to share one small thing about my country, that when I was young, I used to be participating and enjoying the track and field and hurdles, especially hurdles. I used to represent my country in different places, different races. And now, after 19 years, after being a mother, I realized that the only race that really matters in this life, it's the human race. As we all work together to make this world better place, not only for the Palestinian children, but also to our children, I see that there's a lot of challenges, a lot of hurdles that in this country we have to face. It's racism, greed, corruption, proxy wars that have devastated my own country, colonialism, militarism, and many, many other hurdles, many, many other challenges that we all must face together. My native language is Arabic. And I have chose a word to share with you. this word called sumud. The word sumud means steadfast. It means also perseverance. So I would love to see this word, the meaning of this word reflect on our life in reaching into a human right for all, for the whole universal. Thank you for joining us today in this program, and thank you for listening. And I hope everything that we hear and we feel today, listening to our Palestinian, will really reflect on the word sumud and its meaning. Thank you so much.
Thank you and welcome. I'm Ann Perry, the Executive Director of Tree of Life. And I just want to quickly introduce everyone before they come up. And right now we have the privilege of being able to hear our wonderful musicians. It's been such an honor to be listening to them all week. Tamer Al-Sahari is head of the Arabic department at the Edward Said Conservatory of Music in Bethlehem. Plays the oud beautifully, and his beautiful wife Nadine, who will be singing for us. And we have Albert Basile, who is, they all know each other from home, but he is now based in Boston at the Berklee College of Music. So please welcome the three of them and their beautiful music.
Hello all. Thank you for being here. It's our pleasure to be here with you today. This song it talks about Jerusalem. And hope you enjoy it.
مدينة القدس تراجع
Thank you so much. It was so beautiful. Next up, we have Dalia Shahada. She's going to come talk to you about her city of Hebron, which she is from. And it's been a pleasure to get to know her this week and to listen to her speak. She's very dynamic, very compelling. And welcome, Dalia.
Hello, everyone. I am Dalia Shahada from the Holy Land, Palestine, in Arabic, Palestine. I am from the city which has the fourth Islamic landmark and the second Jewish landmark. I am from Hebron. Hebron means Al-Khalil in Arabic. That means Sadiq. Hebron is one of the most commercial cities in Palestine, and it is include the holiest places in Palestine, the Ibrahimi Mosque, which is home of the tombs of the biblical prophets Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, and Lee. Hebron, they produce ceramics, glasses, lamps. We have grapes. We produce stones, leathers, and we produce also mattresses, and we also produce cheese and yogurt. During 1994, an Israeli citizen, his name Baruch Goldstein, in Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, in the morning, he entered the mosque while the worshippers were praying in the mosque, and he started shooting on the prayers in the mosque. The result was he killed 29 worshippers and injured 125 worshippers. And the results also, the Ibrahimi Mosque has been separated into two parts, 60% for the Jewish and 40% for Muslims. Third, the whole mosque is open only for both Muslims and Jewish, the whole mosque, 10 days per year. And those 10 days are only for the holidays and for Fridays in Ramadan for Muslims. The Israeli soldiers closed the mosque for 6 months after the Ibrahimi massacre. The Israeli government put watching cameras inside the Ibrahimi mosque. And the one who calls for the prayer is prohibited from performing his task calling for praying. They prohibiting him from doing his task approximately 52 times per month. And also, they add 2 checkpoints. Muslims who want to go and pray in the Ibrahimi Mosque, they have to pass 2 checkpoints. And in each checkpoint, the Israeli soldiers check their ID cards and also they check their bags. And after the Ibrahimi massacre, the Israeli government, they closed a very important street for peoples who live in Hebron, for Palestinians, called Al-Shuhada Street. This street was a commercial street, was include many businesses, stores, and inhabited homes. But after the closure, is now converted to be called the Ghost Town. In 2015, there is also another street called Tel Rumaida. The Israeli government converted this street to be a military zone. In this street, there is around 2,000 Palestinians is living there. And those 2,000 Palestinians, they are prevented from welcoming their relatives to their homes. They must, if they want to go to that street, they must have a clearance why they want to go to that street. And they are not allowed to deliver the very big machines like fridge and washing machines to their homes in that street. In 1997, the Israeli government and the Palestinian Liberation Government, they signed a protocol called Hebron Protocol. This Hebron Protocol has divided the city into two parts, H1 and H2. H1 is totally under the Palestinian Authority and civil administration, but H2, it is under the Israeli Authority. H2 is where the Ibrahimi Mosque, and is where the Old Town, and is where is the Al Shuhada Street and Tel Rumaida Street. In Hebron, and all around Hebron, there are approximately 32 settlements. In the Old Town of Hebron, there are 400 settlers, and all these settlers are under protection of the Israeli soldiers and Israeli police. While on our way to the Ibrahimi Mosque in the Old Town, there is barbed wires. We put these barbed wires to protect ourselves from the settlers. The settlers keep throwing on us many stones and garbage. 1 month ago, I went to many homes in the Old Town of Hebron, and I made some interviews with the families. The result was like this. One of the parents told me that when we refused to sell the house, they told us we would suffer. That's mean. The Israeli government keep telling the citizens who are living in the Old Town of Hebron, sell us your home with $1 million. If you don't, you would suffer. How do they mean you would suffer? That means the kids in the home will not sleep very well. As you see here in the result, I want to sleep very well with my family without feeling afraid. That means the Israeli soldiers coming to our home in the midnight while we are sleeping without any, they are planning with that, so they come to our home suddenly in the midnight. They destroying our stuffs in the home. They waking up everyone in the home. And also, they did not allow the ambulance to save me. Many cases in the Old Town of Hebron, they need to ask for ambulance to save themselves. But the Israeli soldiers, they keep stopping the ambulance for hours to enter the Old Town. Another proof, if you remember, as I told you before about the Ibrahimi massacre, the Israeli soldiers stopped the ambulance to enter the Old Town and save the people who killed and injured in the Ibrahimi Mosque for 3 hours. They closed my dad's store. As I mentioned before, Al Shuhada Street. They closed many stores. Why they do close many stores? Because they want to take this street. They don't want any Palestinian resident there. Also, many Palestinians, they said they left their job from there because the settlers keep harassment on the Palestinians there. So the Palestinians decided to leave their jobs and to leave their homes. I don't like going to school each day. Students who are going to school each day from the Old Town, they cross through many checkpoints, and the Israeli soldiers keep check the students' bags. And also, while you are teaching in the school or while you are studying at the school and taking your exam, the Israeli soldiers throwing bombs to the school. I want to drive my own car in my town. Imagine yourself that you are in your town, someone from not your town coming and telling you, you are not allowed to drive your car here. What will be your reaction? Of course, you would refuse. So the same that's happening in Palestine. They refuse us to own our car in the old town of Hebron. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I wish a freedom for Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia. And next we have Rowan and Sophia Ali. They are brother and sister from Bethlehem, and they will be talking about the barriers that Palestinians face when they're trying to access healthcare in Jerusalem. So please welcome Rowan and Sophia.
Hello everyone. We are happy to be here with you. My name is Sufyan Ali. I am a senior law student in Ahliya University in Bethlehem. We live behind the Church of Nativity where Jesus was born. Me and my sister, we will focus in our presentation on the access to health care for Palestinian children. And I supposed to share with her, but because I don't feel good, because last night, so she will continue with you our presentation, and I'm sorry.
So, hello everyone. I'm Rowan Ali. I'm Palestinian from Bethlehem City, and this is my first time in US, and I'm so happy to be with you, and thank you for attending. And I'd like to thank Tree of Life for inviting me to be part of them, to join them in presenting my country. And in our presentation, actually, when Ghufran talked to me 3 months ago, it was hard for me to choose my topic about our struggle, because we have many struggles, actually. So I decided to be talking about healthcare, as the human's life is the most valuable thing we have. So here is a 9-year-old, Dalal Lawlah. She's from Nablus, and she died on the checkpoint while the Israeli soldier prevented her father from taking her to the Rafidia hospital. So access to healthcare. Before we start, we need to know who are the Palestinian refugees, for those who do not know. Palestinian refugees, people who lost their homes after the 1948 conflict, and there are 5 million refugees around the world. And nearly 1/3 of the registered Palestinian refugees, more than 1.5 individuals, live in 58 Palestinian refugee camps. And the remaining 2/3 of registered Palestinian refugees live in and around the cities and towns of the host countries and in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So here is a picture of the Yarmouk camp refugees who are waiting for food distribution in 2014. So who are the organizations that provide healthcare for Palestinians? UNRWA, non-governmental organization, Palestinian Red Crescent, and the private sector. And we start with the causes of morbidity for Palestinians, basically Palestinian kids. Malnutrition, stunting has been rising since 1996 from 6.7% to 7.9% in the West Bank, and from 8.2% to 13.2% in Gaza. And the situation in Gaza is worse because of the siege and the wars, and 50% of the population in Gaza classified as food insecure, comparing with 25% in the West Bank. So here is a 4-year-old Omar al-Baradi is surrounded by food in the hospital to encourage him to eat, because this is his 27th time to the hospital as he has immune deficiency. Mental health. A survey investigated that 80% of Palestinian teens had seen shootings, and 28% of them had seen a stranger killed, and 11% of them had seen a friend or neighbor killed, and 54% of boys had experienced body search. Here is a boy, Palestinian boy in Ramallah in the West Bank, who was arrested by the Israeli soldiers, and he's only 14 years old. Here is another boy who was arrested by the soldiers in Nablus. So disabilities, it is estimated by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics that 1.5% of the Palestinian kids aged from 1 to 17 years old were disabled. And it is well known that the conflict and the occupation contributed greatly in such loss of limbs, serious head injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorders. And here is the Palestinian student Mahmoud Abu Hussein from Gaza, and he lost his leg after being shot by an Israeli sniper, as you see. I'm not sure if the pictures are clear for you all. And another boy who's crying and afraid because the Israeli soldier arrested his father in front of him in the West Bank. And another boy who's crying so for being arrested. So what are the determinants of health problems in Palestine? Actually, the main social determinant of Palestinian health care is the socio-economic, in which they live, the lack of access to health care, electricity, food, and the violence they see every day. And it is not only about the occupation, because there is another complex that faces Palestinians, like the interior governance failures, aid dependency actions and inactions of the international community, and so on. So what are the barriers in access to healthcare for Palestinians? First, we start with the permits. So Palestinians who are living in the West Bank or in the territories that are controlled by the Palestinian Authority are not allowed to go to Jerusalem or any areas that are controlled by the Israeli side, like Area C. So they need a permit, and they need to coordinate previously with the Israeli side if they want to go to a hospital for a specific medicine or something, where special hospitals are sited in Jerusalem. So permits are reviewed on security grounds, where over 100,000 permits in 2017 and 2018. And between 2012 and 2017, the percentage receiving permits for people in Gaza to cross from Gaza to Jerusalem has dropped from 92% to 64%, who are not allowed to have health care. Here is the checkpoint where people go through to show their IDs and their permits and to have a body search before they go to areas that are controlled by Israeli side. So if they don't have the permit, they won't be allowed to go on. So ambulance to ambulance transfer. So if a Palestinian patient is in the hospital, he needs to go to a hospital in Jerusalem, he needs to coordinate with the Israeli side, with the Israeli ambulance, to be waiting for him after the checkpoint. So he go with the Palestinian ambulance, and the Israelis one will be waiting for him in front after that checkpoint, and they will take him. And even if he has a critical case, they won't take him before he has coordinating and has many meetings before he has been to the checkpoint. Here is an ambulance in Ramallah, where this ambulance driver found himself stuck among clashes, where Palestinians were protesting a killing of 2 Palestinians, and the driver decided to go away from the clashes, and the soldier came and ordered him to shut off the engine and give him the keys, and the ambulance was detained for like 20 minutes, and the patient was inside the ambulance during that time. So it is another woman who was rejected because she's not holding a permit that allows her to go to Jerusalem. So she was rejected holding her baby in the West Bank. So health infrastructure. The health infrastructure in Gaza is worse because of the wars and the constant cycle of bombardment and attempted rebuilding has led to the destruction of 17 hospitals and 56 primary clinics. Here is a destruction in Gaza of a hospital, as you see. So medical materials, Gaza faces severe equipment and stock shortage. For example, in 2017, 34% of the essential medicines and 32% of the medical disposals were at zero stock in Gaza, meaning that less than a month's supply was available. Here is a boy in the kidney disease department in a hospital in Gaza. And we come to the medical and nursing training. So Palestinian students who study medicine or nursing, for example, they need to have their internships. Some of them decide to go abroad out of Palestine, and they need permits, which we call the visa, to go out of Palestine to have their internships. And if they did so, they won't be back to Palestine because they will have better opportunities and better salaries, so they went back to Palestine. And other students who need to have their internships in Jerusalem, also they need to have a permit to go to the Jerusalem and hospital. So we have a lack of qualified and needed staff of doctors and nurses in Palestine. So at the end, I would like to thank you all for attending and for listening. And actually, I'm so proud for being here and to represent my country, Palestine. And hopefully this will help Palestine even in a very small way, because we need people to know the truth of what's happening there, to let them see our struggle, because the media and the propaganda hide everything, and most of people even do not recognize Palestine and never heard about it, some of them. So that's it at the end, and thank you. Please. Yes, please.
There is recent news about 2 days ago that Al-Muttala Hospital in Jerusalem, it's a specialized hospital for cancer patients, is threatened to be closed, and they are not accepting any Palestinian patients during the upcoming period, because Palestine Authority transfer their cancer patients to Jerusalem, to this specific hospital, and the government doesn't have money to pay the hospital, and due to the overload debts to Al-Muttala Hospital, they may close the hospital or not accept any Palestinian patients. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I would like to shed some light on our preparation as a group, five from Bethlehem, one from Hebron, and 2 from Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, our friend Lama Abed and her father could not make it today because the Israeli Authority did not give them the permit to leave Gaza. But our friend Lama Abed, she shared with us a small video, and we would like you to watch the video with us. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Lema, a 15 years old from Gaza City, and I am the girl who's at the advertising of a Tree of Life event. And why am I not joining the team, the people who they are from Hebron or even Ramallah? Because the Israeli border denied us, and they are saying that we can't travel. At first, we tried with my dad, and they denied him because they saying that men can't be out of Gaza. And now, we are still trying to be out with my mom, and no answer until now. 3 months of trying and no answer, and always there is a big deny for us. The Israeli border denying us all the time. Please take an action from what's happening now and tell the whole world what we are suffering from. The electricity, wars, borders, and everything we are suffering from. Let's take consideration and let's tell the world what we are suffering from here in Gaza and support us and our dream. Thank you very much. And please, know that we will keep dreaming despite all of the hard situations and the hardships we live in Gaza. The wars, the electricity, and the borders. We will keep dreaming because here I am talking to you as the big dreamer in Gaza who want to be the first cowgirl because it's my dream to have a big farm which is full of cows, and also I hope to be a big writer in the future, and especially in Italy. And the third thing is to be a doctor for kids. And the fourth thing is to be a famous and really big TV presenter. And I'm really hope for the team who is talking for the Tree of Life today, the big wishes and best luck for you. Thank you very much.
Before we wind up or have them come up and play, we're going to pass the hat. We know this series will run in the red, and we accept that because our mission is to educate. And so it's important to do that no matter the cost. But your support today can really help us to offset the costs of running these programs and goes a long way in enabling us to bring voices of conscience to communities like yours here. Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear a few more songs, and some friends of ours here at the church are going to pass the hat.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for your support, and I kind of mangled that a little bit because I tried to cut out what I was going to say because we got started a little bit late and I was condensing it. But I actually do want to say a few things that I had planned, and that is I really have been looking forward to this program all week. We love New Hampshire. We are so happy to see old friends here and to see new friends here. And I also wanted to thank the Middle East Study Group here at Keene UU, the New Hampshire Palestine Education Network, New Hampshire Peace Action, and the hopefully new SJP chapter at Keene State College. Go Maggie, you can get it done. Also, it has been such a privilege for all of us at Tree of Life to have spent this past week with our talented musicians, Tamer, Nadine, and Albert, with our truly compelling speakers, Dahlia, Rowan, and Sophian, and of course, Cindy and Craig. And so that brings me to introducing Cindy and Craig. It's really an honor to be introducing them to you today. They are such an inspiration in the way that they managed to turn their immense grief into action by founding the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice in her memory, and working all these years for peace with justice for Palestine, supporting other activists and other organizations, not only for justice for Palestine, but also for indigenous rights in this country and around the world. So please join me in welcoming Cindy and Craig Corrie.
It's really great to be back in Keene. The years fly by, and I sometimes forget where we've been and when, but we've been here a couple of times, at least one time to speak, and it's wonderful to come on such a gorgeous day, to stand with some of you down in the center of town during your peace vigil. We were so glad to join you there, and then to see the rest of you, some I know who have come from a distance. Thank you so much. My daughter, Rachel Corrie, was the youngest of our 3 children. She was born in 1979, nearly 12 years after the occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and the Shabbat farms by Israel, and over 30 years after the dispossession of the Palestinian people during the Nakba. Our family knew no Palestinians at the time she was born, not in Olympia, Washington, where we live, nor anywhere else in the world. Nor could we have imagined how the Palestinian people would one day become a part of Rachel's life and our own. As a child, Rachel had dreams. She was an adventurer. In 1990, in her 5th grade yearbook, she wrote, "I want to be a lawyer, a dancer, an actress, a mother, a wife, a children's author, a distance runner, a poet, a pianist, a pet store owner, an astronaut, an environmental and humanitarian activist, a psychiatrist, a ballet teacher, and the first woman president." Does she sound like anybody you've just heard from in Gaza? Yeah. Rachel was an observer in our family and always a reader and writer, someone compelled to create. She said, "I write because in some secret compartment in my brain, this little ironclad woman keeps screaming, 'It's all you have.' Writing is brave. It is maybe the only brave thing about me." Rachel loves Seattle and our Northwest mountains, forest, and the sea. And as a college student, she wrote, "You can live here for years and believe you understand, and yet not understand what it is you are living in. I'm glad I know about the people who lived on Eld Inlet. I'm glad I know about the internment of Nisqually people on Fox Island. We're traditionally presented with history as a thing that happens somewhere else, certainly nothing to intervene in. Studying the history of this area roots me. It makes me more conscious of the land and more conscious of myself and of the people around me as actors in history. We've certainly waded in the same water and wandered on the same beaches as very brave people. It makes bravery seem more possible." After 9/11, Rachel became deeply involved with several Olympia peace groups. She opposed the Iraq War and led an effort to create a human flock of doves for Olympia's Earth Day tribute to honor all of life, the procession of the species. She celebrated after and wrote, "I've danced down the street with 40 people from the ages of 7 to 70 dressed as doves. The procession is a values statement. I'm happy to see a peace message included in that. It's important for people who oppose war and repression to speak about who we are as a community, in addition to speaking about war and racism and injustice. We are not outside. It's important that human rights and resistance to oppression be included in the way we define ourselves as a community." Rachel was drawn to the issue of Palestine after 9/11 when she met with those in our community who had strong connections to the issue. She read, she learned, and she studied Arabic. In her journal, she wrote, "Why do I want to go? I've been organizing in Olympia for a little over a year on anti-war global justice issues. And at some point, it started to feel like this work is missing a solid connection to the people who are most immediately impacted by U.S. foreign policy. I've had this underlying need to go to a place and meet people who are on the other end of the portion of my tax money that goes to fund the U.S. and other militaries." In January 2003, Rachel traveled to Israel, the West Bank, and finally to Gaza. And I know this will be review for a good number of you here, but I want to share this map. I think maps are helpful to us. Gaza is bordered by Egypt, by Israel, and by the Mediterranean Sea. It's approximately 30 miles long and 4 to 8 miles wide. It has 139 square miles of land area. That's less than 1/5 the size of Cheshire County, New Hampshire. 1/5 the size. But it has more than 26 times the population. It was about 1.7 million when Rachel was there. It's now hovering around 2 million. Today, more than 65% of the population are under the age of 25. I want to repeat that. More than 65% of the population are under the age of 25. According to an Israeli legal rights organization, Gisha, in 2018, unemployment in Gaza reached 52%, and for women was 74.5%. Unemployment figures have been even higher for the large young population under the age of 25. Though restrictions on access to Gaza began in the 1990s, access was easier in 2003 when Rachel was there than it is today. This is because of the severe blockade, siege, and closure of Gaza that Israel has imposed since the Hamas party prevailed in 2007 elections and there was overturn of government. Israel controls the land, air, and sea access to Gaza. In 2003, with other international activists, Rachel lived with and built relationships with Palestinian families in Rafah along the Gaza-Egypt border, whose homes were at risk of demolition by the Israeli military, and who welcomed international solidarity. She slept at water wells to protect them from demolition, worked with children's and women's groups and Gaza human rights organizations, and planned for connections with counterparts in Olympia through a sister city project. She wrote at a small internet cafe into the wee hours of the morning to get stories out to our family, to her friends, and to the international media. She wrote of the children, and she said, "I couldn't even believe that a place like this existed. But even more, can you believe there are children here? Forget the fear. They tell me that at night. Forget the fear. I am ashamed that I am scared for my own body and dying anonymously inside a house in one of the most populous places on earth, where children die as martyrs of the occupation, which we pay for quietly without ever knowing their names. We need more people. I love all of you. Rachel. In 2003, the Israeli military was engaged in massive home demolitions to expand the Philadelphia Corridor, a narrow strip under Israeli control between the border of Gaza and Egypt. The BBC and others reported that Israeli Colonel Yom Tov Samia had stated on military radio that Israeli forces must raise all the houses within a strip 300 to 400 meters wide in the Rafah refugee camp. That no matter what the future agreement with the Palestinians would be, this would be the Israeli border with Egypt. That Arafat must be punished, and after each incident of Palestinian resistance, another 2 to 3 rows of houses must be raised. Clearly, this was collective punishment and a war crime. In our legal proceedings in Israel in 2010 and 11, the deputy battalion commander for the southern Gaza Strip was asked by our attorney how far the Philadelphia corridor extended. His reply was, up to the next row of houses. In their report titled Raising Rafah, Human Rights Watch noted that between September 2000 and September 2004, more than 10% of the population of Rafah, more than 16,000 people, lost their homes. Many were dispossessed for a second or third time. And Human Rights Watch stated that the pattern of destruction strongly suggests that Israeli forces demolished homes wholesale, regardless of whether they posed a specific threat in violation of international law. And in most of the cases, Human Rights Watch found the destruction was carried out in the absence of military necessity. With other international activists, Rachel engaged in nonviolent direct action to support the families whose homes were threatened with demolition. On March 16, 2003, at about 5 p.m., as members of a Palestinian family watched through a crack in their garden wall, Rachel was run over and killed beneath a U.S.-built and funded Caterpillar D9R armored bulldozer headed directly towards the home, and a bulldozer that was operated by 2 Israeli soldiers. At the time of Rachel's death, our family was comforted, sustained, inspired, and mentored by the human solidarity that we experience from people all over the world. Solidarity that after 16 years continues from our Palestinian friends and from so many others. In 2003, a woman in Israel wrote to her friend in Olympia, where we live, and the woman passed this message on to me. We need all our young people, ours and theirs. A woman in New York State wrote, my grandparents fled the pogroms of Russia 100 years ago and spent decades working for the creation of a Jewish homeland. I'm certain that if they were alive, they would weep for all that is happening there now, as I do. And a gentleman in the Middle East wrote, I write to you as a parent myself, and also as a Muslim who believes passionately in the freedom and dignity of every individual on our earth. It seems to me that we too carelessly forget or disbelieve our shared identity across all times and cultures, when in fact, we are one human family desperately in need of peacemakers. What have I learned about solidarity from my daughter and from Craig's and my own experience these past 16 years? And what is key for us all to remember as we move forward together in solidarity with the Palestinians and with all who are oppressed? Rachel chose to go to Gaza with a Palestinian-led movement, the International Solidarity Movement, ISM, committed to resisting the entrenched systematic oppression and dispossession of the Palestinian population. I have learned that in our work, we must elevate and prioritize Palestinian voices, like the ones we've heard from today, and the voices of those who live with the injustices. They must always be at the forefront of our discourse. Rachel saw connections between issues, From Gaza, she wrote, "What we are paying for here is truly evil, the largest evil I have witnessed directly. Maybe the general growing class imbalance in the world and consequent devastation of working people's lives all over the world is a bigger evil. Maybe being here should make me more aware of what it might mean to be a farmer in Colombia right now." 16 years later, Craig and I and our colleagues talk about the intersections between issues, the need to include in our discussions those who work on indigenous rights, on opposing racism, on disproportionate police violence against people of color and of their incarceration, on the treatment of human beings at our borders, and more. A Palestinian colleague said in a recent U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights webinar that simply showing up for those who work on these related issues is doing Palestine solidarity work. The Palestinian struggle must now be one for universal human rights. Rachel wrote, "What is privilege? It is the thing that is uncomfortable to say. Your secret kinship with Sam Walton, any advantage you enjoy based on your position in a society, anything unearned, arbitrary. What is white skin privilege? White skin privilege is the giant iceberg looming beneath the tip that is security checks at the airport." 16 years later, those of us who have lived privileged lives and have benefited from racial, ethnic, economic, or other privilege know that we have much listening, learning, and self-examination to do. We must be on guard, watching for how our own internalized privilege makes way for hierarchies and confiscation of power. As we do this necessary work, we humbly ask for guidance and some forgiveness, because there is need in this movement for all of us. Rachel wrote, "I look forward to all of us who are new at this developing better skills for working in democratic structures and healing our own racism and classism and sexism and heterosexism and ageism and ableism and becoming more effective." Rachel valued commitments and said, "I continue to believe that my home, Olympia, could gain a lot and offer a lot by deciding to make a commitment to Rafah in the form of a sister community relationship. Many people want their voices to be heard, and I think we need to use some of our privilege as internationals to get those voices heard directly in the U.S. rather than through the filter of well-meaning internationals such as myself. Solidarity calls for commitment. Rachel's was to Gaza and to its children, both of which cry out to us for further attention." In Rachel's journal, one of her many lists is titled "Identifying Baby Steps," and it's followed by a string of small to-do items that would eventually make her trip to Palestine a reality. "I have learned that the baby steps, yours and mine, and those of all the others across this country who work with us for change, are cumulative, and they are making a difference. We are changing the discourse on the issue of Palestine here in the United States, and we are elevating discussion of all the related social justice issues that must be addressed as we work for a more gentle and just country and world." Martin Luther King wrote, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." In Gaza, Rachel wrote, "This has to stop. I think it is a good idea for us all to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I also want this to stop." So we have our marching orders, you and I. Their work and ours goes on. Thank you so very much.
That's my wife. And I'm pretty proud of it. I'm a little ashamed of myself, however. So I've got a couple of observations, or an observation and a confession to make here. The observation, I love looking at that picture, and I left it up there for a long time, because that's Laura Gordon sitting on Ahmed's lap down in the southern tip of the strip in Rafah. And Laura was in Israel on Birthright Israel as an 18-year-old when Rachel was killed, and she called her dad and said, I'm going down to where that American girl was killed. You imagine this nice Jewish father getting a call from his daughter that's off overseeing Israel, and she's just going into the Gaza Strip. She stayed down there later than any other Westerner was there in 2003. Learned Arabic, and is total solidarity with those people, as you can see with her mother figure there. So that's the observation. The other thing is what you all know if we were watching, but Cindy does not know because she trusts me and didn't turn around. I put up the wrong, she's grimacing at me now. I put up the disappearing map, the map of disappearing Israel up there, and of course she was talking about places around there, and I couldn't point to them or do anything but mess up the screen. So that takes me, and we'll straighten that out. We'll get it right by the 9th day of our talks, but I'll get that straightened out. But that does bring up a topic that I sort of want to just do a shout out here. So can anybody tell me who the name of the Native American group that was around Keene in the beginning? I'm getting a lot of different things. I looked something up, and I thought it was something like, I'm trying to find it here.
Abenaki.
Okay. Abenaki? Yeah, I was thinking Sokoki or something was another one that I found online. But anyway, what we're talking about is settler colonialism. A lot of other things in here, but when we talk about Israel-Palestine, we're talking about settler colonialism. And if you go back to the shrinking Palestine that I showed there, I want to show you another slide. You might recognize this. You can guess what it is. That's the United States. And those are, you can see into the different colors there, that's where the Native Americans now have their land. So I just want to recognize that we are on somebody else's land. Of course, 500 years ago, that whole map would have been orange, and we wouldn't have anything to do with it. So I don't want to thank Native Americans, because if somebody stole my car, I wouldn't want them to thank me afterwards. But I acknowledge that, and I think we need to go on here. So in 2009, Cindy and I were on our third of 5 trips to the Gaza Strip, and this one, whoops, gonna copy Hani here. This one was with Code Pink. How many of you know who Code Pink is? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we were there, and I was going along. It's kind of like the men's aid. Cindy's church used to have a ladies' aid. We were kind of the men's aid to the Code Pink. It was fantastic. There were about 6 or 7 of us, and I think it was on March 8th. International Women's Day of 2009. The women were doing whatever it is women do when they all get alone together, and the men went separately to several different groups, but we ended up in a small group of young people, probably under the age of 30, that were doing a lot of reporting, television and radio reporting, and they were the ones in 2009, remember the destruction that was going on. They were on top of the roof. They had the satellite upfeed to Al Jazeera, and they were the ones that got the news out. And they were angry at us. It was interesting in our group, but to take you back to that time, in what the Israelis called Cast Lead, the attack on the Palestinian area in the Gaza Strip. During that time, there were 1,342 Palestinians killed and 13 Israelis. Wounded was more than 5,300. Palestinians, 197 Israelis. Homes destroyed, 3,500 or more. Of course, none for Israel. Buildings destroyed, 1,200 or more. Greenhouses, 80. Homeless, tens of thousands. And of course, none for the Israelis on the other side of it. So that gives you a picture of what these people had just, well, it doesn't give you a picture of what they were just undergoing. This is more of a picture. This is just east of Gaza City, and it's looking toward Israel. I pointed that camera to the north. You would have seen the same sort of thing. To the south, it was kilometers of destruction that looked like this. Now, people were still trying to live in some of these houses, and that one, my memory is, there was a man underneath that trying to live in it with the collapsed side of that house. Many more were in tents. Now, if you see tents in Gaza, that means that either the entire extended family's homes were all destroyed, or that they're full. And I don't mean full by Western standards. You know, your brother-in-law moves in and it seems pretty full just with that one extra person. That means like 17, 20, 25 people are trying to live in one house before they get into the UN tents. So that's what we were seeing there, that sort of wholesale destruction. And we had about 4 interpreters, people that could interpret for the 7 or 8 guys that were there. And the discussion around the table in Arabic was so vehement that our interpreters weren't interpreting. They were in the discussion, you know. So it would have been really a good time for me to have learned Arabic, but I didn't. But in the middle of that, then one woman, and I don't have pictures, Cindy had the camera, so that's why I had pictures of her instead. But one woman talked to us and she said, you know, if an Israeli came here, I would tell him it is not enough to come here and see. It is, what will you do about it? What will you do when you go back home? And so then the discussion went on for a little while, and then I stopped it through a interpreter, and I said, you know, we're not Israeli. We've got one Canadian, the rest of us are from the U.S. There are a couple of Israelis that are in the larger group, but not with us here in this small group. I said, but the U.S., you know, any child over the age of 4 in the Gaza Strip can pick up a piece of spent munition and it'll say made in the U.S. on it. They all can point to it. They all know where this comes from about the time they can walk. So I said, what would you do? We come from the U.S. What would you tell us to do? And she just stopped, and she turned to each one of us and said, what will you do when you go back home? And she waited. She waited until we answered her and said what we're going to do, each and every one of us. Well, she went down through that. So that sort of is the message I have for all of you. You heard from the people from the West Bank. You heard from Lama from Gaza. And of course, she's dear to my heart, both from where she's from and just her spirit. Her spirit is here. Her spirit is huge. Her dreams are huge. But she's locked up in the world's largest outside jail. And we need to do something about that. Luckily, I've got some suggestions for you. So I would like you, one of the first things to do, we've talked about it, we need to keep talking at a grassroots level. We need to educate on this, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. But if we want to change policy, we need to also be talking to our government, because that policy starts here. So you also need to get in and start lobbying your Congress. And I'd like you to talk about to them about H.R. 2407. That was introduced by Betty McCollum of St. Paul, Minnesota. We've heard her speak, and she understands this issue. She's very dedicated to this issue, and she has this bill in that you can read easily online, promoting human rights for Palestinian children. And the operative part of that bill, the main operative part of that bill, is that it says U.S. funds that go to a foreign military cannot be used to put children in jail. Seems like a no-brainer. But it's not getting a whole lot of backing in Congress. Now, it does have preambles that say we know what's going on in Israel and what the Israelis are doing to Palestinian children, and it is awful what they're doing. But what this would impact any child anywhere in the world if U.S. funds are being used by a foreign military to lock them up. I want to say something that I'm kind of, I don't know if proud's the right word, except I'm really happy about. Cindy read yesterday that the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Council has come out with a letter in favor, backing this, clap, right, HR 2407. And I feel particularly great about that because Seth Goldstein, it seems, he's a rabbi in Olympia, and he is right now the president of that council. So it's pretty cool. I know somebody that's done that, and I know his journey and the work he's done and what a friend he is for us, but it ain't easy for him. So I'm really proud that he came on that one. And you can all back it too. So when you do a little lobbying, don't just call or write. Call and write, but then keep going back because you need to be there. You need to be there over and over and over again until they get to know you. And I hope in the way I would do that is try to know you in a positive fashion because you want your member of Congress to be successful, you want them to like you, and you want them to do the right thing. So, and have their back. If they come out on this, then, if they get criticized, write a letter to the editor or something to back that up. The other part of it is, how many of you know about BDS? Okay, I don't have to go too far there. But what I would say is that in state legislatures, I don't think this state has a law at this time against BDS in trying to prohibit or intimidate people from getting out and working on boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. But it could happen. And Cindy and I and a number of other people have gone to our state legislature. We live right there. It's in Olympia, so you just walk up the street from our office and talk to those people. And I'll tell you, it works even better if you go when there is nothing in front of the legislature. Because, if you don't wait until you've got chicken pox, to do something about it. You go out and you get an inoculation. And so if you go to your state legislature now, you're kind of inoculating them against what may happen later. And I think it's well worth doing. So I'd ask you to do those two things. And then the other thing, there are people here in this room that can facilitate with Tree of Life traveling to Palestine. And I thought it was impossible until my daughter did it. And then people saying, you've got to come here and see it. And I don't know how many times we've been to the West Bank now. We've been to Gaza, as I said, 5 times. But you need to go there. You need to go and see what's going on, but you need to go and meet a few more people. Eat some makluba, drink some tea, find out about the over-the-top sort of hospitality that you will get in Palestine, and then come back and talk authoritatively to your friends, neighbors, members of Congress about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig and Cindy. We do have a few minutes. We are over time, so we might cut the Q&A to 5 minutes instead of 10. But we'd like to give a few of you an opportunity to ask any questions, if there are any. You want to raise your hand, and I'll come around with the microphone, and you can ask it to any of our speakers.
To the Coreys, you mentioned intersection and intersectionality. Your 20-something-year-old daughter went to Gaza for human rights. What about the people who have children that are young, who are going to be in their early 20s? What advice do you have to give them?
We're asked questions like that fairly often. First of all, I love to talk to young people when we have that opportunity. And I always say to them, you don't have to travel to Gaza, even though we want people to do that, of course, although traveling to Gaza now is nearly impossible for people just wanting to go unless you're really connected to an NGO that has an end in there, mostly medical. So Craig and I haven't been able to get into Gaza since 2012, even though we've tried. So, but I just tell them, you know, you can find ways to contribute without making those kinds of journeys. But also, there are many choices for how people can go to a place like the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and do work. And it doesn't have to be direct action necessarily. It can be other forms of support, and the Palestinians will tell you what you can do to help them. Through organizations certainly is a great way to do it. Rachel didn't expect to go there and to lose her life. She was the first person in the International Solidarity Movement who died. There had been one other person injured seriously, but she was the first one who was killed. So, of course, there's danger, but there's also great opportunity. And I would just say prepare well, know what it is you're getting into, talk to the people who are on the ground, find out what they're needing, and learn all you can before you go. She did that, and was with others who had as well. I hope that helps a little.
I was thinking when Cindy was talking before our first trip there, of course, a lot of times you talk to our State Department, and even throughout all these years, they'll say, don't go to, particularly to Gaza, don't go there. But to us, at that time it was Bill Burns was Undersecretary of State for Near East Affairs, and he called me on the phone and says, you have to go. You need to go there. And he says, you'll be fine. And I said, well, you know, I know they're crazy people in the United States, and it makes sense to me that in Gaza, somebody could get angry that this blonde American girl gets so much attention, and so many dark-haired Palestinian girls have been killed, and nobody pays any attention. You know, there could be a crazy person in Gaza just like there's a crazy person in the United States. And Undersecretary Burns said to me, there may be one in the whole Gaza Strip. He said, but if there is, there'll be 1,000 Palestinians that'll make sure that they never get anywhere close to you. And then he said, just stay with the Palestinians. The Palestinians will keep you safe. Now, a young person is liable to get out a little bit in front because you do feel like you can offer some protection maybe to the Palestinians in certain things. You can go some places they won't go. And I think that a young person, I would tell them they have no idea who they're taking with them. Rachel would have no idea that Cindy and I'd still be standing here, let alone that her cousins, 2 of her cousins have gone to the Middle East to learn Arabic, or fluent in Arabic. All of her aunts and her sister have gone to D.C. I don't know how many times, but our family, extended family, has in 2003 and 4 talked to every member of Congress or their staff, every one of them, and also to the Justice Department, the State Department, into the White House, particularly her sister for 10 years worked on this. So you don't know, you don't understand who you're taking with you, who else you're committing to this cause, and a young person doesn't really know that. So I you know, I got a whole lot of feelings if somebody that's 20 or 21 comes up and says, I want to go to Palestine. It's like, well, slow down, learn about it, but yeah, go. They need you, and you need to be a part of that. And people ask me, why didn't you keep your daughter from going? You know, and she's 23. She's not asking our permission. She's telling us she's going. But the other part is, you can't ask your child to be less than they can be. So in the end, you've got to let them do that. I don't want to listen to a 40. I'd rather have Rachel here yelling at me that I didn't let her go. Don't misunderstand me. But we didn't think that was what was going to happen. So you don't want somebody to be less than they can be.
And just as a reminder, Tree of Life, we go annually, and we do offer scholarships and interest-free loans for students to come with us. And so take our flyer and contact us. We're planning for our 2020 trip right now.
My name is Gerhard Betting. I came through the horror of World War II and the Holocaust that we discovered the years after that. I like to bring all of this in connection with the Holocaust. I believe that a yearly commemorate of the Holocaust is abstract and is not helping if by itself it is just reminding us what happened then. It was a signal to the world, not ever again like this. If there are a lot of things going in that same direction, what happens in Palestine fits right there. If human rights are trampled, then let us ask ourselves, when we remember the Holocaust, what is happening in the world? What are we doing about it?
Thank you for that. Thank you. We can take one more question. Stan?
Not a question, but things that could be done. One thing is to get video out. I've been working on a TV program called The Struggle. Since 2003, every week we've had a new show, and we concentrate on Palestine. I don't think we have any people or outlets in New Hampshire. So if you live in a town that has public access, maybe you could see me. The other thing is to talk to progressive Jews. Now, I've been doing this since 1982, and it was few and far between in those days. But something has happened. Some kind of dam has broken. And there's a group, Jewish Voice for Peace, and then there's another one, If Not Now, and they're doing magnificent work, and there are people all over, and you should connect up with them. You know, for some reason, Americans have sort of looked to Jews to get permission to talk about Palestine, and that's crazy, but it's the fact. And now there's at least a good segment of the Jewish community that's doing that. And last commercial, I wrote a book to help people out called Zionist Betrayal of Jews. It's not about Palestine. It's about the Zionist groups who, from Herzl all the way to Netanyahu, made these disgusting deals to help their Israel project at the expense of living and breathing Jews. And I have it in the back, and you might want to take a look at it. Thanks.
I'm here because for many years I've been concerned about the cause of Palestinians. For many years I've been concerned about the cause of Palestinians, but I'm agonized by the continuation of violence and wonder whether the continuation is caused partly by Hamas's continued sponsoring of terrorism. Is there any way that this could come to a conclusion?
Hamas is the elected government of Gaza, and they actually started out as social justice organization, religiously based, as many organizations in communities that are under oppression. It is fundamentalist. However, they were elected fairly in elections. And so they are the government, and they actually have been willing to accept the existence of Israel repeatedly, and they have worked very hard to keep factions from firing rockets from Gaza. They are used as a scapegoat. I'm not saying that there aren't parts of Hamas that are, bad for their own people, but Hamas is also, the threat that Hamas is just a terrorist organization is often used as a scapegoat to allow Israel to have these assaults on Gaza that are unjustified.
Can I just say something? I was born and raised as a Palestinian refugee. My aunt was killed. My uncle's body is still being detained for 40 years. We did not go and occupy something called Israel. They came and they occupied and they took us. Gaza, the way Gaza suffers, they don't have to justify to anybody. If anybody comes and attack your house and you shoot him, everybody gonna praise you as a hero. Why can't we defend ourselves? We have the right. In Gaza, in Nablus, in Jerusalem, they demolish our homes. They kill us. They won't let us get health care. They tell us when to come in, when can't we come in. I did not get to visit my family until I got my American citizenship. So I want to hear that Hamas is a terrorist when they're just trying to defend their own people, and they still can't. We would like to think they are, but they can't. No one can. The only people who can really make this stop is basically the USA, honestly. Because if we stop giving our tax money, $14 million a day that we give to Israel, for what? What are they doing to us? They're out of line? I have no idea, but I just really makes me really upset. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for sharing that. I can't take any more questions because we are over time, and we would like to hear some more music from Tamer and Nadine and Albert, and we also have some closing remarks from our founder, David Good. I do just want to add one thing on Hamas, though. In the 80s, they were purely a social, religiously based social organization, and it was Israel and the United States that armed them as a counter to Fatah and started that part of the armed part of Hamas. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes history that we don't know about, or Americans don't know about. I mean, they want to have these armed factions because that gives them an excuse to go in and do what they do. So I just wanted to add that. And now we have some more music, so let's enjoy that.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. On behalf of our Tree of Life Educational Fund, we'd like to thank all of you for spending the afternoon with us. I'd particularly like to thank all the participants in our Tree of Life delegation. We've had a number of venues so far, and it's been quite 9 days together. And our last stop will be at Cape Cod. So I'd like to thank all those that have persevered through these last 9 days. And I'd like to thank the members and the friends, those associated with this Unitarian Universalist community. It's not every community such as this that will open its doors and offer such hospitality to programs such as this. So if you're a member of this community here, would you raise your hand? Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for your hospitality. Also, as I look out there, I see a number of those that are involved in a wonderful network called the New England Network for Justice in Palestine. And they've come from all over the place, from Vermont, from various places in New Hampshire, southern New England. So many thanks for the great work that you're doing in all those different organizations. I'm also thankful to my friend Stan Heller, who's traveled up from Connecticut to be with us. He's part of an organization called The Struggle, and they videoed a number of our, probably going back to the very beginning of our Tree of Life programs. And Stan, thank you so much for the advocacy work that you do. He's also part of another organization called Promoting Enduring Peace. And we had a remarkable presentation to Omar Barghouti and Ralph Nader, receiving an award, the Gandhi Award at Yale. So many thanks for the great work you do, Stan. I also want to plug our journey. Gufran is sitting here in the front row. She's going to be leading our next Tree of Life journey, and that'll be in March. Every year we also go to one of the neighboring countries. We've been to Syria, we've been to Jordan, we've been to Egypt, we've been to Bosnia, and on this next journey we're going to be going to Turkey, which is very important, particularly as you think about what is happening now, but also the number of Syrian refugees that are in Turkey. So we're hoping to spend some time with the humanitarian groups that are working with the Syrian refugees. So if you're interested in taking part in our journey, please talk to Gufran. After Turkey, then we'll be going down to the occupied Palestine. We always like to go up to occupied Syria, which is Golan, the Golan Heights. We also like to go down to the Negev, where the Bedouin there are treated much the same way as the Native Americans have been treated in this country, shoved off into small enclaves, and they're treated as second-class citizens. And we try to spend as much time as possible with all of our friends in the West Bank. Well, I hope what we have heard today will motivate us all to be more actively engaged in the struggle to make this a better world for all the children in our human family. And I'd like to share with you the poem by Emily Dickinson that inspired the title for our series. Will there really be, by the way, we drove right through Amherst, which, as you know, was the hometown of Emily Dickinson. Her poem, will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? Could I see it from the mountains if I were as tall as they? Oh, some scholar, oh, some sailor, oh, some wise man from the skies, please, to tell a little pilgrim where the place called morning lies. As I see it, the poet wrote this poem on behalf of all vulnerable and fragile children. Children such as herself, who grew up wondering whether or not her poetry was any good. Children separated from their families by the cruelty of our immigration policies. Children in Syria who languish in the rubble of what used to be their beautiful homes. Black, Hispanic, and white children who wake up to the sound of gunshots. They also ask that same question, will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? Mosques, they live under the constant threat of Islamophobia, from Christchurch, New Zealand, to faith communities throughout our own country. Synagogues, such as the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and black churches burned to the ground by the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, fueled, I'm sorry to say, by the hateful rhetoric of far too many of our political leaders, including our own president. Believe me, members of these faith communities, they also ask that same existential question. Will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? And Palestinian children, as you have heard today, they also ask that same question. For over 70 years, Palestinians have seen their homes and their villages demolished and destroyed. They have witnessed so many of their sacred olive trees uprooted to make room for more and more illegal Israeli settlements. They've witnessed members of their families who have been violently pulled out of their beds at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, stripped of their clothing. But they try so hard never to be stripped of their dignity. Those you have heard today can recount story after story of how young people, children, under the age of 15, have been blindfolded, thrown into the back of a jeep, an army jeep, detained and interrogated under, quote, mark this, military law, under military law. If you listen carefully, not only with your ears, but also with your heart, perhaps you can hear that they also are asking that same question. Will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? Well, the answer to that question depends upon you and me. It depends on how many of us are willing to roll up our sleeves and take a stand for justice. It depends on how many of us are willing to engage in the hard work of advocacy in support of such courageous initiatives as H.R. 2407, sponsored by Congressional Representative Betty McCollum. And if you don't know what that legislation is, I would encourage you to go to our advocacy table and to get further information. The ancient Greek philosopher Archimedes said, "Give me a lever and I can move the world." Whether we like it or not, the fulcrum of change is here in this country. What we have done today may be interesting in a lot of ways, but it's useless unless we become the fulcrum of change, because nothing will change until we change the hearts and minds of the American people. So let's all get together and do just that. Now that we've come to the end of this program, the question for us is, are we willing to be a part of the answer to the poet's question? Will there really be a morning? For those for whom every day is a long day's journey into night, how can we provide them with the reassurance that they need? And I would ask us to be particularly mindful of the youngest and the most energetic member of our delegation, 2-year-old Hani, the son of Nadine and Tamer al-Sahuri, who live in Bet-Sahor, near Bethlehem. Surely, we cannot see this beautiful child and not feel the moral imperative to do all that we can to make sure Hani grows up free of injustice, free of violence, free to travel unimpeded by walls and checkpoints, free to go to the Mediterranean to swim and build sandcastles in the sand, free to laugh and play with Christian, Muslim, and Jewish children, free to find in that playground the very university of the human family. Isn't that the university from which we hope all children will graduate? Isn't that the answer, the only viable answer to that question raised by the poet? Will there really be a morning? To work together to build a shared society, one in which the human rights and the civil rights of all are honored. Isn't that the answer to the poet's question? I love to get up very early in the morning when it's still dark and the only light is the morning star. How many of you like to go outside and see the morning star? For our Lakota friends out on the Cheyenne River Sioux Indian Reservation in South Dakota, the morning star is a sacred symbol that they incorporate in their beautiful quilts. As the last light in the heavens before the rising of the sun, for our Native American friends, is a symbol of new life, the promise of a new day. It's as if the morning star says to the dawn below the horizon, "Don't worry, I've got your back. I will not be defeated by the darkness. I will keep on keeping on until a new day has arrived." I don't need to remind you of the darkness that we have in the world today, with all the wars, the environmental crises, gun violence, corruption of far too many of our elected officials, xenophobia in all its ugly forms. For me, with regard to the struggle for justice and human rights in Palestine, my morning star has always been a young woman by the name of Rachel Corrie. And I'm so very grateful that her parents, Cindy and Craig, have added their voices of conscience to our program. Cindy and Craig, as I know, I have always kept a picture of their daughter in my office to remind me of her courageous example. Rachel took her stand, trying to stop the demolition of a Palestinian home in Rafah in Gaza, and paid the ultimate price for doing so as she was run over by a bulldozer. The least we can do is to take a stand to stop the demolition of our nation's character, to protect the sanctity of our Bill of Rights. May Rachel's courage inspire us all to take a stand, not only for Palestinian human rights, but also to take a stand for our own democratic principles and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? What do you think? Thanks to those such as Rachel Corrie and all the people that have shared today, and all of you out there, I say that the answer is yes. If you agree, please say amen. Amen. One more time with a little more vigor. Amen. Amen. Thank you.